Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the blues genre again. Now this time we're not going to be diving into sort of the history of the blues itself, but sort of more of that history of the mystique that surrounds the blues and going back a bit further, talking about some individuals that sort of led up to this point where when the Crossroads Blues was released, what was it that actually put that thought in people's mind that someone could actually sell their soul to gain some sort of talent or wealth or fame from the devil himself. So today is going to be more of a history lesson on where this idea came from that you can actually make a pact with the devil to begin with. Okay, so before we get into today's video, much like the last video, there's going to be 5 promo codes sprinkled throughout this video that are going to look something like this. Those are first come, first serve, and if you go to the HSS store, which will be linked down below, you can use that promo code to go and get you a copy of the Compression Simplified course. Okay guys, continuing on with our history of the blues genre, specifically the mystique that's surrounding the song Crossroads Blues by Robert Johnson. In this video, we're going to discuss some great points that some awesome people who watched the last video actually brought up. Now, specifically, let's travel back in time a little bit before Johnson's debut. The reason being is that I'd kind of like to discuss how the narrative of someone actually making a deal with the devil in exchange for talents or money or fame has actually been an ongoing topic of folklore for centuries now. You see, long before Johnson was accused of making a deal with the devil, there were others throughout history that had similar claims made about their actual talents. So one of the first indications of this pact was actually portrayed in that of a well-learned German man by the name of Johann Faust in the late 1500s. Now, Faust had become highly successful and yet was dissatisfied with his life, which leads him to making a pact with the devil at a crossroads, exchanging his soul for unlimited knowledge and worldly pleasures. In fact, the Faust legend has been the basis for many literary, artistic, cinematic, and musical works that have reinterpreted it throughout the ages. Faust and the adjective Faustian imply a situation in which an ambitious person surrenders moral integrity in order to achieve power and success for a limited term. The Faust of early books, as well as the ballads, dramas, movies, and puppet plays which grew out of them, is portrayed as one who is without the hope of heaven, and because he prefers the human to divine knowledge. He is said to have, quote, laid down the holy scriptures behind the door and under the bench, refusing to be called a doctor of theology, but he preferred to be styled as a doctor of medicine. Now, because of this urban legend, the plays and the comic puppet theater loosely based on this legend were popular throughout Germany in the 16th century, often reducing Faust and Mephistopheles, in whom he sold his soul to figures of vulgar fun. The story was then popularized in England by Christopher Marlowe, who gave it a classic treatment in his play, The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus. The date of this publication was debated as likely being around 1587. In Goethe's reworking of the story 200 years later, Faust becomes a dissatisfied intellectual who yearns for more than earthly meat and drink in his life, and thus he sells his soul to the devil in return for what he thought would make him happy. Now, this idea of making deals with the devil didn't actually stop here. Sometime later, another notable urban legend was popularized about a violinist whose name was Niccolò Paganini. At the height of his fame and fortune, Niccolò Paganini arguably is said to have been the greatest violinist in the world, was also both the toast and the bane of Europe, considered by most a musical genius, and by the other half, the devil's minion. Paganini's virtuosity and his sheer appearance while playing the violin had some bearing on the fact that many had believed that he could only obtain that skill after he had made a pact with the devil. The devil's violinist, as he was often called, was born on October 27th of 1782 in Genoa, Italy. It's said that Paganini's mother had her heart set on him becoming a world-famous violinist, and from this there later arose that she had made a deal with the devil, trading her son's soul for the chance for him to become the greatest in history. Now, whatever the case was, Paganini began training on the mandolin at the age of 5 and the violin by the age of 7, both under the instruction of his father. He later played his first public performance at the age of 11 in Genoa, and by the age 13 he was sent to study under some of the most renowned violinists of that time. Now, this is sort of where the plot thickens, so to speak, because when he arrived to some of these men who were actually considered to have violin mastery, they all decided that Paganini's skills were much more than what they could even teach him. So 2 years later, at the age of 15, Paganini began playing solo tours, but within a year had a breakdown and succumbed to alcoholism. Now, besides supposedly being in league with the devil, throughout his lifetime he was also known as a heavy gambler, a drinker, and a shameless womanizer. Now, fortunately for Paganini, he would make a brief recovery from this lifestyle as he became the court violinist for Princess Eliza, who was Napoleon's sister. He would then once again tour Europe, being on a little bit better footing. Already considered to be unparalleled as a performer in his era, Paganini was also one of the first major violinists to choose to publicly perform his various works without sheet music, going strictly off of memorizing the works, which then freed him from standing in front of the sheet music stands. Therefore, being freed from the sheet music stand and having a passion for music, he would flail about on the stage, contorting his body as he would dance his exceptionally long fingers across the instrument, earning him the nickname Rubber Man. He's also reported to have been able to play a lightning speed of 12 notes per second, which was unheard of in that time and era. Now, Paganini himself presented a striking figure. He was tall and remarkably thin, with hollow cheeks, very long fingers, pale skin, and what some had said was flaming eyes. He also often dressed in all black for his performances, and together with his virtuosity and the fact that the violin had already been considered the devil's instrument by those of that era, you can kind of see where this narrative starts to build off of. Now, it's also noted that a half-crazed fan at a concert in Vienna actually claimed that he saw the devil helping Paganini play, and other patrons that were present only had to look at him to be convinced. Now, many would make the sign of the cross as he was playing for fear of being possessed by demons themselves. As these urban legends began to spread, reports of Paganini doppelgangers either sitting with the audience or hovering by his side during his performances would actually become the common theme, sometimes with the addition of horns and hooves. Now, by one dubious report, the devil even once caused lightning to strike the end of Paganini's bow during a performance. Now, his death on May 27th of 1840 only fanned the flames of this supposed pact with the devil. You see, shortly before his death, Paganini had actually turned away a priest who had come to perform the last rites. His refusal is reportedly because he felt that he wasn't about to die and that the whole thing was sort of premature. Though, of course, the rumor mill had different ideas for this reasoning behind this. He died approximately a week after that without ever having received the last rites, and was thought to have haunted the local concert halls, with patrons claiming that they had actually heard him playing the violin between intermissions. So in conclusion, as we have seen today, the concept of exchanging one's soul for talents, wealth, and fame is definitely not a new story. Rather, it's one that's interwoven throughout the fabric of history, and it seems to surface more in the subject of music than any other, which would actually make sense. I mean, after all, Lucifer was Heaven's choir director at one time. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any stories of your own of famous musicians, actors, or anyone who has reportedly sold their soul for wealth and fame. Also stay tuned. On February 27th, I'll be releasing my song, which is called The Crossroads, which is a collaborative effort that those within the community here have put together. It's an awesome song, and it's sort of a different twist on the typical Crossroads theme that's been sort of interwoven throughout music history. Now, if you found this video interesting or entertaining in the least, I would ask that you would please subscribe to the channel and also click the bell icon so that every time I upload a new video or when I go live to take questions from you guys, you'll be the first to know. Until next time, guys, remember, we can dream alone, we can create alone, but together we can achieve so much more. God bless.